Good afternoon. My name is Lawrence Rentoul. I am a portfolio lead for ELISAs and specialty assays at Merck KGaA, which is a large pharmaceutical biotech company based out of Darmstadt, Germany. I'm based in St. Louis, Missouri. So if you see my LinkedIn profile, it will say Millipore Sigma because that's the legal entity name that we operate in across in the United States.
Thank you very much. And how did you end up at the University of Aberdeen?
So it was I so I looked at various universities. I come from the Glasgow area, so obviously naturally I looked at Glasgow and Strathclyde and things like that. That was a little too close to home.
Yeah.
I then sort of looked at St Andrews. I went on obviously the student interviews, and when I got up to, it just didn't seem like there was as much to do as I was looking for there. And then when I got up to Aberdeen, I did the student interview, and it just seemed like the right size of city. It seemed like it had everything that I wanted. It was far enough away that I could be a bit more independent. But also, when I walked in, the people that I was talking to in the student interview, well, the kind of when you're being shown around,
Mhm.
they were just really interested in where you are and what you wanted to do. And I went into the zoology department, and they have the cool museum, and they
Yeah.
took us down into the sort of the marine biology section a little bit, and showed me a thing called a thumbcracker shrimp, and
Yeah.
I was hooked. I was like, oh my goodness, this is awesome. They have like everything here. I was coming to do zoology, so Aberdeen just seemed like it had a good mix of everything. It really did.
Yeah, that's nice. And why did you choose to study cell biology and immunology? And what did you enjoy the most about this course?
So I started on a general zoology degree.
Hmm.
Um, but as I was doing that, I was less interested. I mean, it's great to start on a kind of slightly general path and get a flavor for multiple areas. And I was less concerned with a number of aspects of the course. But when we started to really look at the immune system and the challenge of the immune system, that's what really hooked me. So I got very, very interested in the body's ability to fight disease. My grandfather was a scientist. He was a hematologist,
Hmm.
and so there was a little bit of family background in it. But yeah, that's what really hooked me. The course was great. At the time, it was split between the zoology building and Forester Hill. So you really got a good flavor of the more academic study of diseases. I was very lucky to work with or to be lectured by people like Professor Seacombe, Professor Chappell, Professor Sternberg, and they were really interested in the underlying pathology, not just of human diseases, but also model systems as well. But then once you got to Forester Hill, you really began to get taught the more clinical applications and more clinical background. So that was a really nice bridge between the two worlds, the academic and the clinical. So it really was a good course.
Interesting. And were you a member of any clubs or societies at the university?
I played a bit of rugby, but
Mhm.
then moved to an external club, and I played tennis for the university as well. Not
Interesting.
very well, but
And
I
do you have
still have
any,
the hoodie.
maybe you made lots of friends, maybe what some other memories apart from your studies that you still remember from Aberdeen?
I mean, one of the coolest things that I got to do was um, in the summer. If you stayed up in the area, obviously a lot of us go home and things. I got the opportunity to do a project. It was just pinned on the notice board, and it was to work with the Dee Salmon Fisheries Board. Now, this is completely unrelated to anything I was doing. It just sounded like an interesting thing to do. And they basically, myself and another student, basically spent the summer wandering about Deeside,
Yeah.
trying to find salmon par. Now, I know that's not everybody's jam, but I really enjoyed it because it got me into the hills. It got me into places that I'd never been. I got to go into Balmoral Estate,
Hmm.
and sort of wander about looking for salmon. It was a really cool, it's just a really cool way to spend the summer. So through it is obviously associated with the university, but it was something that was slightly off the wall. Yeah, and I really enjoyed getting to do that. I'm quite outdoorsy, so.
That's interesting. And how was your education at Aberdeen different from your education at Manchester and Nottingham?
So I mean, obviously, it was my undergraduate degree.
Hmm.
I so obviously I don't have too much to base it off against other undergrads. The thing I liked about it, as I mentioned before, was I was able to get more and more specific with it and move in from a sort of wide general base, and I really enjoyed that. So that kind of ability to start with a wide view and then narrow down, I found very good fun. I really did. I found it very intellectually stimulating.
Interesting. And what were your career aspirations while studying, and how did they change with the time when you transitioned from undergraduate degree to postgraduate degree? How did they change?
So I think when I was doing my undergrad degree, I knew I was generally interested in science,
Hmm.
or in a STEM career, but I didn't really know much beyond that. Um, the professors that I had, they didn't super push any particular career choice towards you. They were more trying to hone you. It felt that they were trying to hone you for just a career in general. So you would be going into a science career, but they didn't really sort of say, "Oh, you need to do X or Y." As went to do my master's and other sort of postgrad work, it really felt like you were getting pushed into an academic career.
Hmm.
Okay, so the hardest thing really was to understand that there are other careers out there. So I realized that I didn't feel like I was going to be an academic scientist, and you really are getting pushed into it.
Hmm.
Feels like you're getting pushed into that.
Yeah.
Once you take a step back, you realize there are so many uh, STEM STEM educational pathways that can take you into such a wide variety of careers, whether it's industry, healthcare, you name it. But because you're so focused, you tend to only listen to the people around you. So, in terms of planning the career, it was more I knew what I didn't want to do eventually,
Yeah.
and then I started to raise my head up and say, okay, what else is there that I can turn my hand to, and then my career opened up in front of me. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I just knew I wasn't going to become an academic. Not that that's a bad career path. I still have a lot of friends who are in that path. It just wasn't going to be the right scientific path for me.
Interesting. And what is the main focus of Merck Group? What does it do?
We're a pharmaceutical and biotechnology company, so we employ 56,000 people worldwide, quite big. So the company started over 350 years ago in Darmstadt, Germany, essentially putting the first quality systems around pharmaceutical applications for for patients. And then over literally hundreds of years, it's evolved. So we make everything from the tools that researchers use in the labs.
Hmm.
We make active pharmaceutical ingredients. We make liquid crystals. We have contract manufacturing facilities for mRNA therapeutics. There's a lot.
Yeah.
We're global, so we're all over the place.
That's very interesting. And can you explain a little bit more what is your role and responsibilities within the company?
So my role is one that is so if you start breaking things down, I'm within a strategic marketing function. So I'm the lead for a small business within Merck,
Hmm.
and um, that the terms you'll hear out there will be within a function we call product management. So essentially, a product manager has full portfolio management, full life cycle management for their area. So your touch point starts with ideation. You're essentially there to work out what our customers want and what people will need. And that can come from a variety of sources. You then follow the R&D path. You bring the product to market, obviously through all the company's systems. You then work with your marketing colleagues to bring that message to the market, train your sales colleagues.
Yeah.
And then you monitor it and optimize it over time before potentially making the decision to expand a line or obsolete it. So your job is basically the oversight of your product portfolio for its entire life cycle.
Interesting. And you have worked for Merck Group for a very long period of time. And what was your proudest moment within your career?
This is my 16th or my 17th year. Yeah, it's begun to fade. So there's a variety. Okay, so obviously if you've been around for a while, there better be a variety. So one of my favorite things, I've had 5 positions in
Mhm.
Merck, and one of my favorite ever jobs was as a field application scientist. That is a commercial role technically, but essentially you were there to both promote new and emerging technologies, but also more importantly to support customers who have adopted them.
Mm.
And I did that for 3.5, 4 years. And in that time, I got to make some extremely good contacts, really
Yeah.
just just a great network of people. So I wanted to introduce what's called a feline cytokine panel, a way of measuring inflammatory biomarkers in cats. So I went to the Roslin Institute, had
Mhm.
a look, not much there, but across the road there was Dick Vet in Edinburgh, and I met a professor of feline veterinary medicine, Professor Gunn Moore, and she was working on cat tuberculosis. And by working with her, another colleague, Laura McCulloch, who's now at the QMRI in Edinburgh, and because of my network as an FAS, I was able to bring in Hill's Pet Care
Mhm.
from an industrial standpoint.
Yeah.
We published one of the first um, evaluations of tuberculosis in
Wow.
cats ever for these inflammatory biomarkers. That was cool
Impressive,
because
very impressive.
it really combined like my still like academic love for science and finding things and being involved in the discovery process, but it also kind of showed what you could do in a commercial role as as an agent for networking and bringing people
Mhm.
together. So yeah, that was cool. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
That was a few years ago, and there's been a few things subsequently, like in our biology section. I brought our first piece of software to market and through
Wow.
our system, all sorts of things. But yeah, that one really stands out.
That's very interesting and very impressive as well. And since you mentioned that networking is very important in your industry, what's your advice for students to improve their networking skills and how they can benefit from networking?
Um, so firstly, you have to meet people and you have to talk to them.
Yeah.
A lot of people are afraid of making and maintaining connections. And secondly, as you build up your network, um, you have to understand that there's always, I guess, a quid pro quo. It's never going to be one-way traffic. And if you're asking somebody for something, you've got to understand what you're asking.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people, there's two different types of network. There's social networking. So you connect in LinkedIn, you can follow people. And that's one level, probably the lowest level. The
Hmm.
other one is your professional network, and that does start at university. Okay, so I'm still in touch with people from 25 years ago who I was in the lab with. Levels networking isn't just about connecting with somebody online and being added to their 700 followers on LinkedIn, 1,000 followers on LinkedIn. That's not much. Again, you're just your noise. Build your networks. Start with fellow students. Start with your professors. And if people recognize you as a dedicated and a passionate and a focused individual about your subject area, they will keep in touch. And when you reach out, you'll have that your personal brand recognition built that way, and then you can help them. And remember, you're there to help them as much as they're there to help you. So it's not a fast process. It's one that takes a long time. But as you keep those people close to you, it becomes extremely beneficial and you get things done.
Interesting. Thank you. And do you have any books or resources to share, career and non-career related, for our students?
Um, I mean, start with Machiavelli and work your way through the art of war. So not really no. Mostly, yeah, most of the stuff that I have, I've never really. It sounds awful to admit. I've never really read too many business books, like how to do things. I've been very, very lucky that I've been close to people who I regard as very good leaders, and I've more learned through observing them, the way they do things. I've also had some very good mentors. I really have. So it's been less about picking up a book. Most of the books that I read, most of the papers that I read are science. So that's that's what I do in my spare time. I like it. So no, for me, it's been mentors and observing what I hopefully is best practice through my career.
Oh, that's very interesting. And what's your advice for students and young professionals who want to work in your industry? How to stand out when they apply for roles?
When you're breaking in, okay, I would say you're probably going to need you can get in with an undergraduate degree or a postgraduate degree. It just sort of depends on where your aim is as a starting point. I think the thing we're looking for is a capacity to learn and a capacity, and a desire to do so. So that's really important. You can show that by, if you're in the STEM field, by, if you're doing postgraduate work, try and pick up as many techniques as you possibly can. At least have an understanding of them. Try to get some practical hands-on experience. Also, I personally feel you need to show that you've got other things going on. Okay, so um, work outside of university and things like that can look very good. You want to show those soft skills. So you can lots of people can just put techniques down on their CV, but especially if you're going to go into a company or something like that, we're going to need to see presentation skills and things like that. So if you can find the opportunity to show that you've talked at meetings, that can just be at the university. It can be internal symposiums at the university in your department.